She stormed across my driveway like she owned the place. Her heels were stabbing into the gravel as she jabbed her finger at my face. "You can't just move in here," she yelled so loud the neighbor's dog started barking. "This whole street belongs to the HOA. We'll seize you by force if we have to." I was still standing on the porch with a box in my hands, halfway through unpacking. I blinked at her, confused. "Ma'am, this property isn't part of your HOA. I bought it directly from the county." She laughed, an ugly, sharp sound. "That's what everyone thinks at first, but once you step foot here, you follow our rules. We don't allow pickup trucks, we don't allow sheds, and we definitely don't allow—" She waved her hand at me like I was some kind of stray animal. "People like you who think you're above the law." A couple of neighbors peeked from behind their curtains. One man even pulled out his phone, clearly recording. I set the box down slowly, keeping my voice steady. "Look, I'm not here to argue. This house isn't listed under your association. I checked twice before I bought it." Karen stepped closer until she was just a few feet away. Her perfume was so strong it made my eyes water. "Listen to me carefully," she hissed. "You'll either sign our agreement today, or we'll call the sheriff and have you removed. We've done it before." I almost laughed, but stopped myself when I saw the determination in her eyes. She wasn't bluffing. At least, she thought she wasn't. I said quietly, "You might want to be careful with threats like that." Her face turned red. "Oh, you're one of those people. Fine, I'll make the call right now." She spun around and marched back to her car, dialing her phone as she went. The neighbors whispered among themselves. I picked up my box again, but my stomach tightened. I had a feeling this wasn't just an empty threat. Something told me the real fight was about to start. 15 minutes later, I was in the kitchen unpacking plates when I heard tires crunching outside. I glanced through the blinds and froze. A white SUV with flashing yellow lights pulled into my driveway, followed by a black pickup with HOA Enforcement painted on the side in bold red letters. Karen jumped out first, already smirking like she'd won. Two men climbed out of the truck, big guys in matching jackets carrying clipboards. One of them started taking pictures of my porch. I stepped outside before they reached the front steps. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. The taller guy flipped open a folder. "Sir, you're in violation of HOA regulations. You have 30 minutes to remove this vehicle and any unapproved fixtures, including that porch swing." I almost laughed. "I moved in yesterday, and this house isn't under the HOA. You're trespassing." Karen's smirk grew wider. "You can say that all you want, but you're in our zone. You've already broken two of our rules, parking a work truck and displaying that flag." She jabbed at the old American flag I'd hung above the garage. That hit a nerve. I folded my arms. "That flag stays, and you need to leave before I call the real police." Karen's voice shot up an octave. "Real police? These are our enforcement officers. They're authorized to seize property and find violators on the spot." The neighbors had gathered again, whispering at the end of the street. One older man shook his head, clearly enjoying the show. I stared at the men in the jackets. "You can't seize anything here. Show me a court order or get off my land." The taller guy shifted uncomfortably, but Karen cut in. "Enough talking. Start with his truck. Tow it." When they moved toward my pickup, I stepped in front of it. "Touch that truck and you'll regret it." Karen laughed. "Oh, really? What are you gonna do? Call your lawyer?" I didn't answer. I just stood there, blocking them. My silence made her even angrier. She whipped out her phone and barked into it. "Send a sheriff's unit now. We've got a hostile trespasser refusing to comply." I felt a knot in my stomach, but forced a calm smile. I had a feeling she'd just made a very big mistake.
Within 10 minutes, I heard the low growl of an approaching engine. A real sheriff's cruiser rolled up the street, lights flashing. Karen straightened like a soldier waiting for backup. She even waved at the car as if she'd summoned her personal cavalry. The deputy stepped out slowly, resting one hand on his belt. He was a tall, middle-aged man with a sun-creased face that didn't look like it was in the mood for games. "What's going on here?" he asked, scanning between me, Karen, and the two men in jackets. Karen marched toward him, talking before he'd even closed his door. "Officer, thank God you're here. This man broke into this property and refuses to leave. He's also flying unapproved signage and blocking our enforcement crew. We need him removed immediately." The deputy's brow furrowed. He turned to me. "Sir, do you live here?" "I bought this place last week," I said, pulling the folded deed from my back pocket. "It's outside the HOA's jurisdiction. I can prove it." Karen scoffed, shaking her head. "Don't listen to him. That's a fake document. Our HOA has governed this road for 22 years. Everyone knows it." The deputy took the papers from me and studied them. His eyes narrowed a little. "This is county recorded. Has your name on it, signed by the clerk's office." Karen's smile faltered for just a split second, then she recovered. "That can't be right. Our bylaws—" He cut her off. "Bylaws don't override a county deed, ma'am, and I don't see any evidence this gentleman trespassed." The two jacketed men shifted uneasily. Karen's face turned a deeper shade of red. "You don't understand," she shouted. "If you don't remove him, we'll do it ourselves. We've handled situations like this before." The deputy's tone hardened. "Ma'am, that sounds an awful lot like a threat. I'd advise you to step back." The crowd at the end of the street had grown. Several neighbors now had their phones up, filming her. Karen noticed and turned to yell at them to mind their own business, which only made them record more. The deputy handed me back the deed. "You're fine here," he said in a quieter voice. Then, to Karen, "Unless you can show a court order or legal proof of your claim, you and your crew need to leave this property immediately." Karen's lips trembled as if she couldn't believe she was losing control. She hissed through her teeth, "This isn't over. We'll find a way to get rid of you." She spun on her heel and stalked off to her SUV, slamming the door so hard the whole car shook. The two so-called enforcement officers followed her, looking embarrassed. As the sheriff's cruiser pulled away, I exhaled slowly. I thought it was over, but the way Karen had said those words left a knot in my chest. Something told me she wasn't bluffing about coming back. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me sit up, expecting to see headlights pulling into my driveway again. Around midnight, I finally drifted off, only to wake at dawn to the sound of pounding on my front door. I opened it to find a bright orange notice nailed right onto the wood. In bold black letters, it read, "Eviction warning, HOA mandate." Underneath, there was no county seal, no court stamp, just a sloppy signature with Karen's name on it. I stepped outside and spotted her SUV parked a few houses down. She was standing beside it with a coffee mug in hand, grinning like a cat watching a trapped mouse. I tore the paper off and called out, "You know this is illegal, right?" She sipped her coffee and yelled back, "That's your last warning. Pack up before the board votes to seize the house." A few neighbors stepped outside in their robes, clearly drawn by the shouting. One of them, an older lady, gave me a sympathetic look and muttered loud enough for me to hear, "She pulled that stunt on the Petersons, too. They moved out within a month." I clenched my jaw, but didn't respond. Instead, I went back inside, took a photo of the notice, and sent it to a friend of mine, Mike, an attorney who specialized in property law. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. "Tell me that isn't real," Mike said. "It's as real as Karen's temper," I replied. "What do I do?" "First, don't remove the flag or the truck. Second, keep every piece of paper they give you. Third," his voice dropped slightly, "are you sure you didn't tell her who you are?" I frowned. "Why would I?" Mike chuckled dryly. "Because if she knew you used to work with the county assessor's office, she wouldn't be playing these games. She has no clue you know land records better than her whole board combined." A slow smile crept across my face. I hadn't planned to use that card yet, but it was starting to feel necessary. Later that afternoon, I drove to the county office to pull every boundary map and record tied to my property. When I returned, there was another surprise waiting for me. Someone had spray painted "Get Out" on my driveway in thick white letters. I crouched down, running a finger over the fresh paint. That knot in my chest tightened into something sharper: anger. Karen wasn't just bluffing anymore. She was escalating, and I had the feeling she was about to cross a line that would finally blow this whole thing wide open.
The next morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy engines outside. I yanked open the blinds, and my stomach dropped. There was a flatbed tow truck parked in front of my driveway, its winch already hooked to my pickup. I rushed out barefoot, waving my arms. "Hey, stop right there!" The driver, a skinny guy in a reflective vest, barely looked at me. "Got an order from the HOA. Says this truck's in violation. I just do what I'm told." Karen was standing across the street with her arms folded, wearing sunglasses like she was the mayor. "Maybe next time you'll follow the rules," she called out. I planted myself between the tow truck and my pickup. "You're not touching it. This is private property." The driver hesitated. "Look, I don't want trouble, but they paid in cash and signed the release. If you got a problem, take it up with them." "I am," I said, glaring at Karen. "You try to drag this truck an inch and you're trespassing, and you're going to want to hear what the sheriff thinks about that." Karen smirked. "You think the sheriff will save you again? You'll be gone before he even gets here." I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Say that again," I said, keeping the camera on her. Her smirk wavered, but she didn't back down. "I said you'll be gone by tonight. You don't belong here. We decide who stays." The tow driver shifted uncomfortably. "Lady, I'm not risking my license over this. I need to see a real court order." Karen spun on him. "Do your job or you'll never work in this neighborhood again." That's when I noticed a dark sedan creeping up the street. It wasn't the sheriff. It was Mike. He stepped out in jeans and a blazer, holding a thick folder. Karen's confidence faltered for the first time. "Who's that?" she asked. Mike walked straight past her to me. "Morning," he said calmly, then raised his voice enough for the driver and the neighbors to hear. "This is a wrongful seizure attempt. I've got the property lines, the county exemptions, and a restraining order request ready to file if this keeps up." Karen's sunglasses came off, her eyes narrowing. "You can't scare me with papers. This is our street." He tilted his head. "Then you won't mind if we invite the county surveyor to check if your HOA actually includes this land. Oh, and by the way," he opened the folder and pulled out a single page, holding it up so Karen could see the official seal. "This is a temporary injunction. You so much as step foot on his driveway again, and you'll be in contempt of court." The tow truck driver immediately unhooked the cable and muttered, "I'm out of here." He climbed into his cab and drove off without another word. Karen looked like she was about to explode. Her face went blotchy red. Her hands clenched into fists. "This isn't over," she spat, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You'll regret buying this house." Mike glanced at me with a small grin. "She's going to regret a lot more when she sees what's in the county files." For the first time since I moved in, I felt a flicker of relief. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the type to back off quietly. She had just been humiliated in front of half the street, and people like her don't take humiliation well.
That night, the wind was rattling the shutters, but the real noise was coming from my phone, message after message from neighbors I hadn't even met yet. "Karen's been going door to door," one text read. "She's saying you're a squatter," another said. One even sent me a shaky video of her standing on someone's porch, whisper yelling that I was armed and dangerous and planning to take over the street. By morning, the gossip had spread so far that even the mailman slowed down to stare at my house. I tried to shake it off and headed to the garage to finish unpacking. That's when I noticed the side gate swinging open. I knew I'd locked it. I stepped out to close it and froze. In the patch of dirt by the fence, there were fresh boot prints. Big ones. They led straight to the back corner of my yard where the boundary marker stood, one of the iron stakes that defined my property line. But the marker was gone. I crouched down, heart hammering. The hole where the stake had been was fresh and damp, as if someone had yanked it out during the night. I called Mike immediately. "I took the marker," I told him. He didn't sound surprised. "That's a classic trick. They'll probably try to prove later that your house sits inside their zone. Keep that area untouched and set up cameras today. This is evidence of tampering." I spent the next hour installing the trail cams I'd brought from my old place. By the time I was done, Karen's SUV was creeping past my driveway again. She didn't stop, just slowed down enough to glare at me, her phone held up like she was filming. Around noon, Mike came back with a thick folder of survey maps. We spread them out on the hood of my truck. "See these lines?" he pointed. "Your lot was carved out of the old farmland before the HOA was even formed. Legally, they can't touch you. But if they've stolen the original marker, they're planning to challenge the boundary in court." Before I could respond, a shadow fell over the papers. Karen had walked right up the driveway, her arms crossed, wearing that same smug smile. "You two look busy. Drawing treasure maps? Won't help you. At tonight's board meeting, we're voting to annex your property. By the weekend, you'll be under our rules or you'll be gone." Mike laughed, under his breath. "You can't just vote someone else's land into your HOA. Karen leaned closer to me, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "We've done it before. Don't think you're special." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the driveway. Mike looked at me, his expression turning serious. "She's bluffing, but she's dangerous. I think it's time you tell me the whole truth about why you bought this house. I'm starting to feel like you knew this was coming." I didn't answer right away. Because he was right. There was a reason I'd picked this exact property, and it had everything to do with Karen's HOA. I stared at the spot where Karen's SUV had disappeared down the street, the words still echoing in my head. "We've done it before." Mike waited, arms folded. "You gonna tell me, or do I have to guess?" I hesitated, then finally said, "I didn't just buy this house because of the price. I bought it because of what's underneath it." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Underneath it?" I led him around to the side of the house where the ground sloped toward the woods. Back in the 80s, this whole area was farmland. When the county rezoned, they missed a strip that runs behind the HOA's homes all the way down to the creek. The original owner of this lot kept mineral rights to the land. Those rights came with the property when I bought it. Mike blinked, then let out a low whistle. "You're telling me you own the subsurface rights under half of Karen's street?" I nodded. Every time they build a fence, run a pipe, or even dig for a pool, they technically need my permission. I figured nobody would care, until I found out they'd been using my strip to run a private water line for their clubhouse. Mike's grin spread slowly. "So the HOA's precious irrigation is running right under your land." "Exactly. I wasn't planning to mess with it, but now," I shrugged. Before Mike could respond, my phone buzzed with a new message, an email from the county surveyor's office. I opened it and felt my jaw tighten. Subject: Unauthorized boundary change request. Message: A petition was filed this morning by the Oak Pines HOA requesting a revised boundary map to include Parcel 42B, your property. We require your signature to approve this change. I handed the phone to Mike. His eyes narrowed as he read. "They actually filed it. She's trying to legally absorb your lot." We were still processing that when we heard the sound of footsteps on the porch. I stepped back around the corner and saw a young delivery guy pinning another notice to my front door. "Another one?" I muttered. He just shrugged. "I was told to post it. Have a good day." The paper was thicker this time, printed with HOA letterhead. Final notice of special assessment. Failure to pay $12,450 for annexation fees within 48 hours will result in lien placement and immediate towing of all vehicles on premises. Mike read it over my shoulder and shook his head. "She's digging her own grave. This is extortion on paper." I folded the notice carefully. Good, let her keep digging. The deeper she goes, the harder the fall. But even as I said it, I felt that knot of tension in my stomach tighten again. Karen wasn't bluffing anymore. She was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes, sometimes dangerous ones.
That evening, the sky turned dark and heavy, the kind of stormy gray that makes the whole neighborhood feel uneasy. I'd just finished dinner when a knock rattled my door, sharp, impatient. Through the peephole, I saw two men in suits standing on the porch, rain dripping off their jackets. They didn't look like cops. When I opened the door a crack, the older one flipped open a leather folder. "Good evening. We're with Oak Pines HOA's legal committee. We're here to serve you notice of pending lien and seizure." I pushed the door open the rest of the way, crossing my arms. "You're trespassing, and that paper is meaningless. This house isn't under your HOA." The younger man smirked. "It will be after the vote tonight." I almost laughed. "That's not how property law works." The older man's smile tightened. "You can make this easy or you can make this hard. Pay the assessment, sign the annexation consent, and you'll avoid further complications." Behind them, I caught a glimpse of Karen's SUV idling under a streetlight. She was sitting in the driver's seat, phone in hand, watching. I held their gaze. "You've got 30 seconds to get off my porch before I call the sheriff again." The older man sighed, slipped the notice into my doorframe, and nodded to his partner. As they stepped off the porch, I could hear Karen's car door slam. She marched toward me, rain streaking her hair. "You think you're clever, don't you? Hiding behind loopholes. But I warned you, this street doesn't want you here." I leaned against the doorframe. "What you're doing is harassment. I'm giving you one last chance to stop before you end up in court, or worse." Karen's eyes glinted in the streetlight. "Court? Honey, I am the court here. I built this community, and I can tear it down. Watch me." She turned on her heel and disappeared into the rain. A few minutes later, Mike arrived, soaked and carrying his laptop. "They held the vote," he said, shaking off water. "The HOA board passed the annexation, unanimous. But it's invalid without your signature. The county's already flagged it." I told him about the visit from the legal committee and Karen's little speech. Mike rubbed his temples. "She's cornered now. That's when people like her do something reckless." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again, this time a notification from the trail cam in the backyard. I opened the live feed and my blood went cold. The image showed 3 shadowy figures near the corner fence, kneeling by the waterline with tools in their hands. Mike leaned over my shoulder. "She's trying to reroute the pipeline." I felt my jaw tighten as I grabbed my jacket. She just made her last mistake. I stepped out into the rain, Mike right behind me, and for the first time since I moved in, I wasn't the one on the defensive anymore.